kill the brain and you kill the ghoul.
Welcome, boils and ghouls, to the Cold Dead Heart Horror Break, where we discuss all things horror. Today we have a very special guest with us, Kippy, who is going to discuss the Wither TTRPG, and we also have C with us, one of the creators of the Wither universe and Wither novels. So we are so very lucky today to be able to explore these topics. To get things started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, Kippy?
Yeah, thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. So my name is Kippy. I come from Finland, so for that reason, English is my third language. So if I botch some pronunciation, that's why. So, about me, I work in a software developer, which is basically IT. Gaming is part of my life. I have played D&D about 4.5 years by now, of which 4 years I've actually been running a group, being a dungeon master, which is more or less the reason why I got into this project as well. I'm also a huge horror fan. I watch almost every kind of horror movies I can. In average, about one per day. Not so much lately, but in best of times, quite a lot.
Thank you so much for that, Kippy. And C, why don't you tell us about this amazing world that you've created, this zombie universe, Wither?
All right, so a couple years ago, me and a guy that I served in the Army with, Z, who's not able to be here tonight, we got to talk, and we both were, really into zombie stuff, whether it was movies, books, some podcasts that are pretty decent out there right now as well. And one of the things that we had kind of discussed was the attempt at realism for a lot of these projects that you see out there. And they do get a lot of stuff right, but there's very often a jump to be to grab the audience's attention. And when they do that, a lot of them seem to kind of draw back on a lot of that realism. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to try and create a universe where that was paramount. So obviously, in the zombie apocalypse, zombies aren't, what we would consider real. So we wanted to try and have, all of the interactions between, people as realistic as possible and kind of taken from our own lives and stuff. And when we initially started the project, we reached out to a couple friends of ours who, had done their own small business stuff. They had worked with investors trying to, get their own projects off the ground. And one of them, his name is Fugio on the Discord. He owned a gaming bar down in Austin, Texas. And he had done a bunch of research with it. And part of what he was doing was he had a lot of people who were into the tabletop style games. And one of the things that he had talked to us about was trying to bring in different people from different walks of life into one giant community, right? So we had a little bit of the survivor and prepper thing. We got some military folks, and we have a lot of people who are into the horror genre as well. And then now into that tabletop game, because it is a niche, right? There's not some people play it, and when they play it, they really get after it. And then some people who are like me have only ever heard of it in passing and have never had any experience with it. So our goal was to try and create something that represented what we had created in the universe, which was like a realistic brutality to the situations that people were in. So, when we started to figuring out kind of getting our baseline foundation for the game, it was, well, how do we make something that's engaging and fun, but also extremely difficult? And then when we started talking a little bit about that, I believe I reached out to you at one point, Gigi, at the very, very beginning, because you had kind of an in that community for us. And we went from there, and we have a channel on our Discord called Work with Wither. So basically the idea is, we want to try and build a community here. So anytime there's anything going on within the community where we think that people who are in the Discords would like to or have the opportunity to kind of influence the universe that we built, we reach out there. And it wasn't, probably 24 hours after the initial message, probably a little over a year ago now, where I was like, hey, we're trying to build this tabletop game. We really don't know what we're doing. Is there anybody who would like to kind of help us develop this? That has, some background and knowledge into it. And the turnout was immediate. I think we had like 6 or 7 right off the get-go. And then that very first kind of conversation session about what we wanted to talk about, Kippy was there. And, it's just kind of been, this amazing roller coaster over the last year and a half, or no, about a year now, of being able to develop it. So, we're super grateful for everybody who's been a part of it. And, we're really looking forward to reaching that light at the end of the tunnel that, fingers crossed is just a couple months away. So, with that, there's a lot of discussion about the game, mechanics for it, how we should do things, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, that we can go over. But, to kind of start, I think, Kippy, first question for you, from your perspective, how did you get, roped into this mess, as we like to call it? And then, what were your initial thoughts on a zombie themed TTRPG?
So, if I recall correctly, it was right at the beginning when you posted to the Discord. You posted about this project that you need some help. You want the community to join in. I was lurking at your Discord back then. I wasn't really that active at all, but I was actually, and still I am running a D&D group, which Titi belongs to, and I think we discussed before one of them sessions we had about this project, and I was interested. I wasn't exactly sure how much I was able to contribute to it, because I have never been part of anything like project like this. But I was like, okay, I have some experience with running games. I somewhat know how Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition works. Also from my background, because I love video games, and part of my love of video games is actually dissect the games, the mechanics, how things work. So I basically like, okay, I'm interested. I'm not sure how much I can contribute, but at least be part of it at the beginning, see how things go on. I don't really think I had any expectations. I was like, cool, this sounds nice. If this picks up, that's even better. But yeah, I don't think I really had any real expectations in any way about it. But yeah, but after the initial first discussion we had, I don't think even back then I really thought that I would end up taking more or less the lead on like thinking about the mechanics, running the games. Well, I actually probably thought that maybe I can like run the games because I had all the tools and services that can be used for that. But things just, after the first couple of meetings, things just progressed naturally, things flowed, and that led where we are currently. As you said, like hopefully a couple of months away from finalizing the rule book, basically.
And something has creeped out of the shadows. We have Ken of the Dead here to interrogate our prisoner. I mean, ask Kippy some questions.
Hey guys, hey Kippy, thanks for joining me in. Yeah, we've rocked a couple of games over on the Wither Discord as you've been doing this. Like D&D is pretty new to me. Like I only first started playing during COVID. right? When we were all kind of in lockdown and stuff. But you know your stuff, man. It's a blast playing with you. So I'd like to start off with when did you first get into D&D and what made you want to start running your own games?
So basically, I've been into D&D for a long time, mostly through video games, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, games like that. I never played D&D myself until 4.5 years ago. Maybe 5, really hard to say. When I was actually in another Discord forum server where people were just asking, like, is there anyone who wants to play? And I was like, I've always wanted to play, but never really had a chance. So I jumped in. After that, we played, like, I think half a year or so. But unfortunately, our dungeon master back then, he had to stop. I can't really remember why, but basically the campaign we were running was just cancelled, halted. And I was basically like, okay, I do not want to stop playing. So what are my options? My only option was, okay, I start running the game. And that's where
You're kind of forced into it.
Not really forced. I was also kind of like interested in running games as well, even though I had no experience, and my experience on actually playing Dungeons and Dragons was just half a year long. So I pretty much had to learn.
Right? So to play a character in a game as opposed to running a game, it's got to be two fully different experiences, right?
Yeah, it's definitely. I would say the biggest difference. Well, there are a couple of differences. First of all, I would imagine, and what I remember from time I played as a player, I was just able to just hop in when the session starts a little bit before, maybe think a little bit before the session what my character wants to do and so on. But as a dungeon master, I pretty much when our session ends, we play weekly at the moment. I basically, when the session ends, I immediately start to plan on next session, which I do throughout the whole week. Usually the last day, like last day before our session, that's when I'm like locking things down, what I've been planning on during the whole week. So there is a lot more work when running games than playing. And also there is the fact...
I'm going to throw a little bonus question at you, Kip.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, because I wonder this sometimes with my buddy who kind of runs our games. Do you ever find yourself backed into a corner, like when people make decisions that you didn't expect and just have to kind of like bullshit your way through it and make some stuff up on the spot?
All the time.
Yes?
All the time. All the time.
Can
all the
I
time.
just chime in and say you're welcome?
Yeah. A lot of things is that, or I would say, has been caused by Gigi doing anything else except what I expected. However, I would say after like a year or two, I kind of like learned, especially since the group I'm playing now, we pretty much the same group. So you learn what your players are going to do. You can anticipate what they are going to do, what their reactions are. So it makes it easier, but there are moments when you still like, okay, I had no plans for this. And then you just make up things on fly, pretty much.
That's it. They gotta keep you on your toes, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say I recall someone posting somewhere at some point that when you run Dungeons and Dragons games or any such game in other systems, you can pretty much plan how much you want, but you probably end up throwing like 90% of that away, which is more or less true, I would say.
Yeah. Although, I mean, you do some incredible world building yourself, because I know one of the players who takes very fastidious notes, for our last campaign had something like 90,000 pages of notes or something. 90,000 words.
Yeah, I think it was like 70 pages or something like that. It was insane. I was like, my notes are not that long for that campaign. Like I have notes on like 4 different files and in 3 different notebooks, like physical notebooks, and I would say my notes were not that extensive. Probably because most of the things I actually do, I just have them on my brain. I write down like short notes, but otherwise I just keep things on my brain, my head, pull them out from there. So, yeah. One thing I really love and what I've been doing is actually like I like to build my own world and settings and campaigns. I kind of like, I'm not saying I hate, but I don't like to use like pre-made settings, mostly because I think I'm way too much tied on the lore, especially for something like Dungeons and Dragons, which has like, 30, 40 years worth of lore at this point. And I'm like, if I try to keep lore, I just end up missing something, and someone like will go like, actually, that's not what happened. And I'm like, having my own world, I can make up the rules and events at that point.
That's crazy,
Which
man.
is pretty nice.
So,
I mean, the homebrew stuff is really nice.
So with that, right? So you've been doing this for going on 5 years now. You know, you went from being a player to being a dungeon master or a DM. I don't know how many countless campaigns or one-shots you've probably been a part of. So in comparison to the Wither universe, out of all of these, have you ever been a part of another project or a game that you've created or someone else created that's similar to this one? And then, you know, if so, you know, tell us about them.
Not really. Never been like part of like any project like this. Back when I was in university studying software development, I was part of the classes was actually like game design as well. So I have a little bit background in there as well. But yeah, so I have like, I probably still have somewhere like very crude self-made games, which probably don't even work, but never been in any project like this.
Okay.
Maybe only thing that is slightly similar is what I've been in my current D&D campaign, where I pretty much created the whole world from scratch. But that was more like lore stuff, not game mechanics.
That's actually something really cool about like this Wither game is, and I remember like when the idea first popped up, you know, when we started playing, and it was a question, and I'm not saying like something similar doesn't exist because the world's full of things that I don't know, but I remember like asking like, because I'm not super into fantasy, like classic D&D style fantasy stuff. And I remember asking when the group was kind of getting together and we would kind of do afternoon drinks over COVID, and they were like, why don't we start doing D&D? And it would be a good way to just something, you know, a set time to get together and, you know, we'd play this game. And I remember asking, is there something more real world that we could get into? Like something D&D style, but like with like real human mechanics and stuff. And they spent like a couple of weeks trying to find something. Nothing really fit the mold that had all the level ups and stuff. So we ended up doing just one of the, what's it called? Like that online D&D, like the big popular one where you can like start games. Yes, D&D and Beyond, yeah. So we ended up just, you know, picking stuff from that to do. And it's been fun. But I remember it being like a challenge to find something that had real world mechanics like this, which is what I kind of wanted to begin with, right? And the way that you've kind of made it work here has been really cool to watch.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I don't really think I can. I have probably never heard anything else like that's like this close to realism as what we are aiming. Maybe the closest one is probably the Fallout RPG. which I've
Yeah, that makes sense.
run a couple of sessions, but even that is kind of like, yeah, anyone who knows Fallout universe knows that
Right,
it's
yeah.
It's a
also
little bit more sci-fi, right?
yeah,
more
it's
sci-fi.
Real world, but kind of futuristic sci-fi. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so now we're getting into kind of my follow-up question to that then is, kind of from your experience playing and DMing, how would you compare and contrast the Wither TTRPG that we've kind of developed over the last year to other games that you've played or DM'd, whether it be, the mechanics, the gameplay, the difficulty, the entertainment value that, your players get. What's your take on that?
Well, there are some, I would say it's a little bit difficult to compare because so far we have been focused more on the actual mechanism of the Wither RPG, as in compared to what other RPGs I've played, where I can focus more on the lore and like events and storylines. So in that respect, it has been a little bit different to run Wither games. On the other hand, I would probably say that running the Wither games are easier because the rules are not as complex, which was actually part of the original plan. The design choice we wanted to go with is that the rules are simple enough that anyone can basically just pick the book up, read it through a couple of times, and then start playing. Compared to like Dungeons and Dragons, where you have like 25. I'm probably way off with that number, but not too much. Like different rule books, all the different kind of mechanisms, stuff like that. That just like trying to find a specific rule while playing D&D is usually takes minutes. As in, because there are so much rules to go through, and which makes it also more difficult to remember everything compared to Wither, where we currently, I think we stand like 27 pages, which covers pretty much everything at the moment. So even if I do not remember everything, it's much easier to find like, okay, what was the actual wording on specific rule.
Right.
And maybe because we also made the rules, we basically know what we intended with the rules.
Right.
So,
And I think that system that we designed, being put to the test over these last couple beta sessions with people joining the game who have never seen it before, they all did seem to pick up on it really quickly. It didn't seem like there was much of a learning curve at all, and the feedback
it's intuitive, right?
Yeah.
The way that you guys designed
Seems great.
It's intuitive. It's almost how would you as you react in this situation, and you could play that out, right? Like obviously the skill sets and the person are a little bit different, but they're still human. As opposed to like a fantasy game where you could be playing, I don't know, like a unicorn man or something, right? Where the mechanics are going to be completely different. This is, it's intuitive, and it actually it gets your brain working on a more like physical plane rather than reaching into far imagination. You're reaching into, okay, if this threat was real in front of me, how would I as a human being react? And the rules complement that, right? Which I dig a lot. I think is very cool.
I do have to point out what you mentioned, that when we started like the more open beta run with the new people who have never been part of this project, first time they pretty much like the first session they played, I was surprised how quickly they picked up the rules. I was expecting like more just going through the rules, trying to explain like, okay, this is how it works. It was after like first hour, people already went like, okay, I want to do this, so I have this skill, so I rolled this many dice. and I'm still surprised how quickly people picked it up, which is also I'm really happy about it, because that means that we kind of like reached the goal we had in mind of easy to jump in game.
It's a success, right? Like if people are getting in, they're picking it up quick, and that was the intent, then yeah, nailed it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, from like an actual running a game point of view, how do you find that the real world like horror themed games differ compared to running, say, a fantasy game, like from an actual creative point of view?
Well, I would say like the real world based is maybe a little bit more difficult, because in certain terms you have to think like, especially since we also aim for as realistic as possible, I have to go all the time. I have to keep in my mind like, okay, this is something like what's actually physically possible for a human to do. What is possible for me as a real person to do? Can I do it? If not, why would these player characters do it? Compared to like D&D, where I can just go with the meme and magic. Like in D&D and fantasy based, I can always everything I can explain with magic, gods, so on, gods intervening, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in
a real world game, you have to actually think of what's logical, what makes sense.
Yeah,
what could
exactly
actually happen. Yeah, I get it.
I don't know how many conversations I was just say I don't know how many times I can even remember where, some like one of the players would come up with an idea, or we would start, pinging ideas off of each other, and we, had to talk through its realism based on, the game versus, kind of what, the player experience would be improved by a thing, whatever that thing is, versus not allowing it because, it's just not plausible, or, allowing it because it is plausible. I thought that was, that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And like
there was a balance, right? You want it to be as realistic as possible because that adds a threat, you know what I mean? And that's part of the enjoyment, but it's also got to be fun. So if you're failing at everything, you know what I mean? It drops the fun a little bit. So there is a bit of a tightrope walk, but like it's almost like spot on, like as far as that fun goes, right? Because like some negative shit could happen in a zombie apocalypse for sure, right? You're not going to get a headshot every time. That's not the way it goes, right? But
one of the things, if I could just chime in for a second, one of the things I thought was brilliant to kind of give an example of what y'all are saying is that Kippy and C were discussing stealth checks, and in the game you can have max stealth, and it could be almost 100% effective against humans, but because zombies do not rely on the same exact senses like a human does, their sense of smell is so finely attuned, yada yada, that you're always going to have modifiers to increase the zombie's ability to find you and track you.
Yeah, or more specifically, because I know you're talking that specific perk we added, which basically allow you to, as long as you are like, you find a cover or you are like in dark area, you can just stay still, and while you do not do anything, move, nothing can see you. However, like I pointed out, and I still remember C's reaction when I pointed out, like, but the zombies can still smell you. Even in dark, they can still smell you. So this is only actually effective against humans, like real humans, alive humans. So yeah. But what you can said about the balance thing, I think that has been the most difficult part of this. To find that balance where we want to keep things realistic and hard. We do not want to have we didn't aim for something like, okay, like power fantasy where you can just go and shoot everything and have no danger. We wanted to have that feel of danger all the time, but also we wanted to have that sense of fun where the players can feel that they can actually get through the mission, get through whatever situation they are.
And feel accomplished doing it too, right?
Yeah,
because it is.
Yeah.
It's tricky. It's hard. You have to make the right moves at the right time and use like an intuitive nature to do it. But you do feel accomplished when you make it through a board, right? And that's the trick. But it's working really well.
That's probably been the hardest part of working on this project, is finding that very narrow rope or path between the two extremes to keep things fun but still keep things hard and realistic. Hard in the sense that basically so that you cannot just run to the group of zombies and just pull the knife out and stab all of them and come out without any wounds or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, I think at the beginning that was one of my more difficult things to kind of accept, right? Because I had never played any games like this. This wasn't a thing that I was used to. And, I came into the project, very kind of hard-headed, I think, initially with how difficult it should be. And, I do appreciate the three of you kind of, being a part of that and being pillars of like reason with me, like, look here, you can't make it so difficult that it is impossible to pass or to be successful, but, still make it difficult enough to where, exactly what you were talking about, where, you are, in a weird way, I mean, I wouldn't say for real, in a fear for your character dying, because that's one of the things that I like about this game too, is if you lose your character, right, your character's done.
Right. You got to start fresh.
There is no, magic revive potions or whatever there would be. So I think the game mechanics have definitely worked themselves out really well, and I'm really happy with where they are up to this point. So I do appreciate that for sure.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's fun, right? Like, I think that's the top, the top of the pyramid right there, is that it's a really fun experience. And I think when you talk to someone who's used to playing D&D and you're like, nope, there's no dragons, there's no wizards, there's no magic, there's no gods. Well, what is there? There's zombies and they're trying to eat you and they're everywhere. What do you have? You have what you would have, man. You got a pipe, you got a stick, you got a hammer, you maybe found a handgun. You got what you would have in a zombie apocalypse. And then when you get into it, it's fun, man. Like, it's a lot of fun. It's the teamwork, right? The aspect of teamwork. Yeah. Like, I find in like a fantasy D&D game, there's a lot of times where, like, especially once you level up to a certain point, you could take on some heavy shit on your own, right? Like, if you're leveled up. There's no leveling up to the point where you're going to take on a horde by yourself in the Wither universe, because it wouldn't be possible as a human being. Doesn't matter how Rambo couldn't do it. You know what I mean? So, like, having to rely on a team and that team dynamic, and okay, you go here and you go here, and this person's getting swarmed. So like, that interaction is what makes it so fun. Right, like that team, that community, that team aspect to it, because you're relying on each other, just like you would have to in a real ZA, right? Like in a real zombie apocalypse, you're not going to make it on your own. Whether you're a team of 2, a team of 3, a team of 4, you're going to be relying on each other every step to get food, to get ammunition, to get medicine, and it plays out that way in the game, which I find really, really cool.
Yeah, and also the fact that if you are actually infected, you can actually end up becoming a zombie in middle of the game. So there is also that point of like teamwork. You have to work together, because
Yeah.
if you don't, you may end up in situation that teammate of yours is now standing next to you, and he or she
It
is
was a sad day when we had to put GG down.
Yeah.
I had so much fun. This is when TT you rolled the. I think you were bitten, and then you just like failed the next roll, and you immediately become a rebel. Was like, well, do you want to play as a zombie now?
So that's a perfect segue into the next one. So we've talked a lot about us as the players, right? You know, in our experiences in the game, you know, using teamwork and trying to avoid the undead and all that. But what are your favorite or most memorable experiences, you know, while DMing these sessions? You know, favorite kill, hilarious death, etc. And I think you're starting to allude to one of them right now.
Are we talking about Wither or in general? I can do like.
Well, let's do Wither first, yeah, and then jump into the other ones.
I think the most memorable moment probably was the point when TT was actually died and turned to zombie, because he went a little bit. I'm sorry, TT, about this, but you went a little bit reckless, and you went with melee build. Yeah, melee build, and you decided again, like without anyone, like anyone else to cover you up. You just decided to rush to that one door, and I already knew when you went to that door that, okay, there is a group of 3 zombies behind that door, and if you are opening that door now, the zombies are after you. Like next, it's their turn is next, and you are going to be in big trouble if you are going there and opening that door right now. And you did. I was like, okay, I'm for kill.
Yes. Like, okay. Whoopsie doodles.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess I'm screwed.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun, though. I kind of like that.
Yeah. And after that, because I think you immediately, like next round, you also turned to zombie. You first got infected, and like I think the first bite even, you got infected, and next round, at the beginning, you rolled for whether you stay alive or actually turn a zombie, and you failed that roll immediately and turned to zombie. Like that was just a cherry on top of the cake, basically. And
the worst luck.
I think at that point, I think it was you who was standing next to TT, by the way. Like, literally at the... Someone was standing like just next to TT when she turned. So there was also...
It was me, you're right, yeah.
Yeah. So there was also like, okay, TT is now zombie. She's standing next to you. It's her turn now.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
The fun week.
Yeah.
All right. Did you have any other ones that you wanted to talk about? You know, from anything that you've done?
Yeah, there is actually one, and TT knows this because she was part of the campaign, and it actually ties pretty well because this is, after all, a horror podcast. So I was running like a year ago. I was running a horror-themed campaign on Dungeons & Dragons setting, and it was basically like I took everything I knew about horror, like movies and stuff like that, and just poured them all together. And part of it, there was a section when the group was basically in fantasy mental asylum, abandoned, like filled with ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. And there was one room where there was this like magical mask, which was kind of like used, like it was cursed mask used to like some sort of weird experiment in the asylum. And I was planned like, okay, the first one who is closest, basically, if they fail a specific roll, they just put it on, and they get 2 different visions. One that actually like kind of like gives you some clues about this location and what you are going to do next, and the other one is just some random in the past from the time when the asylum was still working, just before the things happened in there. And I was actually expecting just one player of 5 players to put that mask on. I did not plan all 5 of them like everybody going, okay, it's not my turn now.
No, like
And put the
ducklings.
mask.
Just like, oh no, wait,
Yeah.
I want to put on the mask. What happens when you put on the mask? What do
Yeah.
I see?
And I think I had like, okay, I was prepared to do like 2 or 3 at most. But when it was the last person whose turn was to put it on, I was like, I'm out of ideas what the second vision is going to be. So I literally pulled out like from my pocket like a description of basically a lobotomy section, but the player saw it from the eyes of the patient.
Oh goodness!
And I spent like
cool.
Brutal,
5 or
I
10
have to say.
5 or 10 minutes just describing the scene, not even letting like players to react anything. And yeah, I think that's one of the most memorable moments I had, like just pulling that out. And I think after that bit, that moment, one of the players like more or less in character said like, we need to get the hell out of here.
Put the mask back.
Thankfully,
mask is bad news.
thankfully, the group left the mask behind.
All right.
That sounds
No, I
really
mean,
cool.
and it sounds super difficult to be able to come up with something like that, especially, if you plan to a certain threshold and they just completely blow past that threshold.
Yeah.
So, and that brings us here. So what was the easiest part of building Wither, but also or of building Wither up to the point that it is, versus what is the hardest part, Ben, of helping build the Wither tabletop RPG?
I would actually say they're both kind of the same thing. I would probably say to get the rules where they are. So I actually expected this whole process to be much longer when I joined in, because even though I've never been part of like any project like this, I didn't expect like things go this fast. So I was actually surprised and find it was one of the easiest thing was actually getting nailed like the basic idea of how we want to do these things, how the rules should go. Of course, there was the balance thing, which is also the most hardest thing, was to find that balance. But they are basically the same thing. So what I'm trying to say, like, it was surprisingly easy to like find, okay, this is the rules we want to go with. This is the system we want to go with. We want to do it this way. And then the hardest part was that when we had that basic idea of, let's say, how the perks work or weapon range work, we had it was surprisingly easy to find like, okay, this is the system, the mechanics we want to go with. And then the hardest part was to actually balance it out so that it makes the most sense.
Right.
Yeah, and I think also don't shortchange yourself on this. When you guys decided to go with a 6-sided die system, I think that was a really smart move, because most households, have a set of 6-sided dice, either in a Yahtzee thing or with their cards. Most households have at least a few. And so you don't have to have like any special equipment to play. Yeah.
So that was my thought process from the very beginning, was that I do not want to go as complex die system as in D&D, where you have like several different dice types. I wanted to have like the basic one is 6-sided die, which you can find everywhere. And we went with that quite long. I think at some point I decided, and I talked to GT and C about this, when we actually introduced the 8-sided die for basically, I think at the moment the only place where it's used are shotguns. Damn it. Because that was the only way we could balance that weapon out well enough. I think it was shotgun that one or
Sounds right, just because of the power
sniper
behind it.
rifle, or yeah. So we did have to like deviate from that original plan a little bit, just to get that balance right.
Right. And I mean, we've been working on this thing since, I want to say, last March or April, right? It was when that first kind of session came out. We're 12 months into it, and the development, I think, has come a significant way, kind of like what you were saying, a lot faster than you. I had no expectations. I didn't know, what it would look like in a year or 2 years or 6 months even. And I'm really happy with where we're at right now, as far as, kind of being on the cusp. And with the development and session and all of the different players that have kind of taken a seat in the game so far, I think if we had to count, there's probably been 10 to 12, right?
10 to 12.
Give or take.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so in that, this is, a good way to close up the development piece. Out of everybody that you've seen play during all of the sessions from, day one up until, the chat session that we had last week, who's the most likely to be eaten to death by a zombie?
That's easy. That's going to be Titi. She has died
Hey.
3 times, I think, by now on the Wither. So I would probably say that Titi has both the best chance to survive, because she has prepared mentally so much, but she also probably is going to be the first one to run through that door with zombies behind it.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's fantastic. Right on. You know what I love, honestly, I think the coolest thing is about this whole project is that we've talked about how intuitive it is, and it's kind of designed for like newcomers, but it is also so different that I feel like even like veteran skilled players, it offers something new, and it puts everyone kind of on this equal playing field. So whether you've never played before or you've been playing for 20 years, like obviously if you've been playing, standard D&D stuff, it's going to be different, but like those two groups of people could jump in on a game together and kind of be on the same playing field, which I find really, really cool. Like we've only played in a short time. We don't take it super seriously. It's kind of for fun, but so I'm not super skilled in it by any means, but like the intuitiveness of this and the real world, the way that the real world mechanics have been designed, like it just creates that equal playing field for anyone, right? So it's kind of like, it serves the purpose of what it's trying to do is, okay, you are who you are, but now the zombie apocalypse has happened and here's the situation you're in, right?
Yeah.
So I find that really impressive.
Yeah, I think that's also, which I really like how we actually managed to nail it down, is the level playing field for regardless what your skill levels are. As long as you can basically roll dice and count, you are in equal play field compared to things like D&D. Make smart decisions compared to D&D, where if you know the system well enough, you can basically bend it to do whatever you want, which means that skilled players can create some insane characters, which might be fun for them, but may not be fun for everybody else in the group, because everybody else don't really get to do anything, because the good player basically just wipes the battle immediately with the overpower skills.
Right. Yeah. You're not doing that in this game.
you literally cannot do that in this game.
Right. Yeah, and I love that. That's cool, man.
That does bring in one of my other favorite things that the game does allow is for improvisation and like trap making and coming up with different scenarios, so that you aren't totally reliant on your character's physical capabilities, because they can also Go full
Learn
Home Alone
skills.
on the zombies. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was actually like cool session. I remember when you had to basically like fortify this building. You had like a little bit time to fortify it, and all the traps you created, like the one with literally a grenade in shower, surrounded by like meat, like there was like bunch of meat
Yeah, that was a
strapped on
fun
the
one.
grenade,
Mhm.
so that when the zombies get in and like turning all the water flow on, so that the zombies are attracted by the noise and then see them and smell the meat and try to go for it and pull it down and basically cause the grenade to explode. So yeah, like you can still
Self-detonation.
you can still do stuff like that if you are smart, but it's not like it's not as much skill based. It's more like the way you think, more like that.
And the flip side to that too is, right, we face other survivor groups. So, depending on if they're hostile or friendly, they possess the same creativity against you. So you go from, this lumbering thing that's trying to eat you and it really is only motivated by that one thing, to now you a street filled with some zombies that are, whoever's closest for the most part or is making the most noise is going to get their attention. But then you have other people who can, create their own opportunities to try and either save you or to kill you as well.
Yeah, and like basically the way we created the human enemies is that they have pretty much the same skill as player characters can. They may not have as high skill levels, but basically anything that's available for players are available to human enemies. So yeah, like last session we had, when I mentioned this to C, after the session, like I think you like at that point you realize like, oh, the human enemies can also have perks.
Yeah, it hadn't dawned on me in full depth, because we had that one session where we were like in that street. And we had, there's a group of bad guys out there, and as we were engaging with them, zombies started to come in. And I think we were able to dispatch them relatively quickly. We got a couple lucky rolls of the die.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely, it was one of those points that I hadn't considered fully. And when you had mentioned it to me the other day, it really came full circle, and I was, super excited for the next time we had some bad guys to try and fight in the street, see what they can come up with.
Yeah, of course.
It's interesting too, because like a street battle, like you're fighting another group of survivors, someone pulls out a gun, and then you start attracting zombies at the same time. So then you face this like double threat, and it's like sometimes if you see like, and that's where kind of just human intelligence comes in. Is if you see a group and they don't see you, they could be an easy kill. But if there's a guy you don't see and they start shooting back, then you're going to attract zombies, and then you could find yourself sandwiched, right?
Yeah.
So there is like a lot of forethought. Like you got to think in this game, right? Because you can't rely on a fire breathing dragon to come save your ass.
But basically, yeah. So that session, like that scenario, was specifically designed to have like you have to get through these enemies, but you have to do it quickly because there is a zombie horde coming behind you, and the only way you can go is through the human enemies.
Well, I'm excited to play the next one.
Too. Definitely. So now that we've been talking about it a bunch, I just want to send out an invitation to our listeners to please come and check out the Wither server and the Cold Dead Heart server. I'll have the links in the show notes, so please check it out.
Fun and free.
C, did you have anything?
Oh, well, yeah, I wasn't sure how we wanted to flip into that. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I thought we were doing an intentional awkward pause, just staring at each other.
Yes.
Normal Finnish thing like that 15-20 seconds of just complete silence.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I can add to it real fast.
Okay.
All right, yeah, and so if you were to join the server, we're still the game is still being developed, so we're still running those last couple sessions to kind of fine tune and test the mechanics and make sure everything that we're doing is working correctly. And the hope is that we can get when everything gets to that finalized point, be able to run those sessions relatively frequently on the server, so anybody who joins in will be able to jump in and play right along with us. Kind of test out their mettle against the zombies. But we do have, and I've mentioned it in a couple episodes prior to this, we have the Living Dead weekend event in Monroeville, Pennsylvania this June. And fingers crossed, we're not going to rush it because we want to make sure the product is good, but fingers crossed we'll be able to kind of debut the tabletop game there as well, so, along with some other stuff that we have.
Version.
Yep. We'll have the rules printed out in a real nice packaging. They'll be professionally done. We'll add some cool designs to all the pages, and then the hope is we'll have some maps on there so you can literally grab the rules, take it home, read through them real fast and just get after it, at whatever pace you'd like. And then the hope is that the PDFs for these will be on the website as well, which is witheruniverse.com. We're not exactly sure how we're going to facilitate all of that quite yet, but it's something that we're working towards right now. But obviously we have to have, the finalized version, which, fingers crossed we are really close to. So yeah, that's about it. As far as that goes, we're almost there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we decided pretty much that we are locking the features, so we are not adding anything anymore. So I would say, and most of the things have been tried and tested quite well at this point. So I would say we have few more stuff to just test out that they are actually working as we want them to work. But yeah, I'm hopeful as well that we get everything done by June.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
It feels so close, right? Because it does feel polished.
Yeah.
It does feel close, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think it has a lot of playability, which I like. And I think with it being
replayability.
Yes, replayability, coming up with new sessions.
Mhm.
You could take the base game and play it as a one shot, or you could really, if you had a very clever DM, expand it to a whole campaign. And I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to point out to whoever picks it up, even though we have things written in the book as rules, everything is basically if something doesn't work for you, you can adjust them. If you want to add stuff that's not covered in the book, I would say feel free to do that. We wanted to also keep the things as simple as possible to actually allow and give a better possibility for these homebrew expansions people want to do for their own campaigns. So basically, we wanted to give out basic rules that you can just pick up and play. But if you want to go more fancy, there should be the rules should be flexible for that.
Right.
On that note, what'd be really cool is a feedback tab where people who do pick up the game, whether the PDF or the physical, and are running it and do come up with cool real world rules, and they could submit them, and then you get when you do expansions, when you do volume 2s or whatever, really cool ones, you could kind of credit the person by name, be like, oh, and so came up with this, and we've added it now to the official rule book. That would be pretty dope.
That's actually a fantastic idea.
That would be really good.
That's really cool idea. There has to be a little bit. I would say we need to be a little bit careful about that, because let's say we come up with an idea, and a person sends that same idea or close to enough to be similar idea. Then are we going to credit this person, or? But yeah, I would still.
It's all for all for fun, right?
Yeah.
Like the community aspect. The more we could shout out people that get involved in it, it's all one community, right?
Absolutely. So, yeah. This might be just my my background kicking in at this point. Like I've been taught to think things from this perspective. Like, okay, so what if someone comes up with an idea, brings it to us, and we have already been thinking about that same idea. But yeah, I would definitely want to hear from others to how they see the rules, what kind of, even if they what kind of changes that could be possibly done in future. Because while I would say we have covered the rules quite well, and we have everything nailed down more or less at this point. We have a closed group still, and at some point, then this is, I know from a software developer, when you design something and you work on something, you become blind to mistakes or fails or something that's not as good as it could be. But you become, because you have been working on it, you know how it's supposed to be. So you kind of you become blind to your own design. So in that regard, I'm absolutely excited to hear from people what they think. If there is something that could be done better, absolutely. I'm open for all ideas.
As long as it doesn't make it easier.
Stuff, right?
Yeah. It's oh, we cannot make the zombie, yeah. Editing that out.
Easier, probably not, but otherwise, yeah. I would put it this way. If someone comes up with an idea, I will definitely listen and consider that idea. If it ends up being used, maybe not.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Or even
it's not
just a forum where people could share ideas, right?
Yeah.
Because it's something that once people have in their own hands, they can kind of play however they want, right?
Yeah.
When we play community ways, we go by official rules, right?
Yeah.
But it would just be fun to see a large community forum of people playing the game and see the different ways that people play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when they're playing their own game, have at it. You know what I mean? Just no dragons. No, I'm joking. You want to have dragons out. but cool stuff that's introduced, right? Things actually from the community that make into the official rule book for official games and stuff like that. I think that idea is just wild. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think it does tie in really well. So one of the things that we started when we wrote the original book, right? Obviously, we weren't authors beforehand. It was a very, very new concept for us. And every time somebody would hit us up on X or hit us up on the Discord, or we would read reviews, anything that was, hey, this was, misspelled, or this didn't make any sense. There was a little bit of a continuity issue or something. We compiled all those, and just last year, we went and updated the book with all of those corrections. So, the thing that's out isn't the original that it was, the original copies that came out when it was first published. They've been updated to make it more clear and concise based on what people have told us and the feedback that we've got. So I think this ties right into the that same thought process of keeping the community a part of it and giving everybody an avenue to try and contribute.
I love that.
Yeah.
And coming from the comic book community, what we call that, see, is now the first editions are the error variants. So we have the first edition error variants, which make them more valuable to us.
Would you then have like a second edition, slightly less error variant?
Yeah, of course. You gotta have whatever's considered the official, right?
Yeah. Well, they're out there floating around somewhere.
Well, thanks all of you guys for joining us today as we delved into Wither Universe and the Wither TTRPG. We hope to see you in the Discord servers. Stay spooky.
Later. That was funny.
That's good, guys.
Oh, man.
You hit stop there, G?